I'm Christy Graham, General Counsel for the district.
I am Katie Barker, Chief Academic Officer.
I'm Gwen Greenwald. I'm a citizen that comes to school board meetings all the time.
Well, we'll just start off with you, Mr. Brockert. Again, this meeting's for you, and we're here to listen, and so we'll start off with you.
All right, so obviously I've already shared, there have been years worth of emails back and forth. So you already have all this information. What we've been trying to do is to make sure that what happened to our family doesn't happen to anybody else. I really cannot be more clear about that. So when our friends recommended to us that the only way to actually make anything work would be to hit the school in the pocketbook, right? We all understand that money makes the world go round. And I've already been honest and open. I didn't want to even attempt to sue the school. Y'all are already strapped for cash as it is. Why would I want to hurt, right? I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anybody else, but I wasn't getting anything. And so we went ahead and sought out legal counsel. They said, yes, it sounds absolutely terrible, and yes, we can help you, until they got down into the details. And the law is more protective of the school than it is of the students. Full stop. The law is more protective of the institution than the students, because what happened to us was clearly wrong. Everybody that I've spoken to agrees. What the schools did not do when we gave them the information about what had happened was not adequate. Again, you have all the emails. This isn't new. This goes all the way back to 2021. Specifically in 2022, when our son was convicted of having a weapon on school property because the school failed to protect him. Again, full stop. I have sent all of those emails. This is not an argument. My son was a convicted felon after suffering bullying in the school. I was pretty sure at that point that we would have something change. We would get something to happen. No, nothing changed. We just had to get over it. Like so many other families just have to get over it. And we did. And then in 2024, in April, and he was subjected to cyberbullying. Again, that is not up for discussion. That is a fact. He was cyberbullied. Following that cyberbullying, there was a smear campaign to try to turn him into a school shooter. I did not downplay that one little bit. I was very clear that somebody had targeted him. That was never followed up. Again, to my or our or reasonable levels, it was not followed up. I have the police reports that essentially end with, we did some interviews and we couldn't find out who, and we just gave up. I know the words in there don't say that we just gave up. But after several days, nothing else happened. This was just something that we had to get over. So again, he was the victim. We informed the school of what happened. We asked for help, and we were expected to just get over it. And you know what we would have done? We would have gotten over it. But we're at a point now where we can't get over it. Because a month after that, he was no longer with us. Now, specifically on that day, what happened? I don't think we'll ever know. Do I think that what happened on that day was something specific with the school? Probably not. But those other ones, years worth, and again, it's not like we haven't been involved. Lisa and I have been involved with our kids' schools since day one. We helped open up Eugene Sires Elementary. And so another little piece that says that this school as an organization does not want to acknowledge what happened was very clear at his service on June 1st when our Sires family showed up in force. But he was an Oak Brook Middle student. There were 3 people from Oak Brook. They wanted to forget quickly. So, in November, when we were told by a second law firm that they could not help us, and again, I've been very clear, we didn't want to sue the school. At that point, I was told we can't sue the school by 2 different law firms. So, I came back to the school board meetings publicly. And in November, on Veterans Day of all days, as poignant as that is, I asked to have my time limit removed so I could say what needed to be said. Also, in transparency, my school board meeting notes have been shared publicly for years. So again, when I repeatedly say that I have been transparent and the school has not, I know I'm just beating the same drum. I get it. But at some point, the organization needs to admit what went wrong and quit saying that every student, every day, when you don't live it. So that's my opening statement as everything in a nutshell. What do we want? We want something to actually change. Change cannot happen if we don't admit that we did anything wrong, period. And I know the legal side of that you can't admit wrongdoing, otherwise it opens up the floodgates to everybody coming in and suing. I get it, that's a catch-22, that's quite the conundrum. I can appreciate that, but at the same time, I want it to change. So even after months worth of coming back to the school board meetings and asking to be heard, and repeatedly being moved on from, I started a podcast. Because again, I'm not trying to keep any of this quiet. And I really do want to help the school be better. I want to help the district do better. I want to help the district stop ignoring this kind of stuff that is still happening today. I promise you, it happened today in one of the schools, in more than one of the schools, to more than one student today. They have reported that something is wrong, and they are expected to get over it.
I think everyone in this room is open to looking at opportunities to examine our practices. We're always open to making things better here, always. It's something that we all want. I don't think we have to, I think we can definitely proceed with listening to your ideas and suggestions for looking at our practices, considering implementing things or ways we do things. I mean, we're certainly open to that.
So the thing that I've already said before, and obviously I've reviewed all of the policies at some point. In 2022, I'd read more of the policy manual than I'd ever wanted to read because I was defending my son against the school, as terrible as that was. That was the first time I'd been to this building in a different capacity than showing up to a board meeting when we had to come for Julian's, I forget the exact term for the meeting that we had to have to decide what his expulsion hearing, right? And here's what normally happens. A student brings a weapon to school, they get expelled, right? That's what happens. Okay, if there are some extenuating circumstances, a student that brings a weapon to school gets put into Gibbons Alternative Program or some other not going back to their regular classes, except it was very clear that he was the victim. He had actually done nothing wrong to any person. He had merely had something on him. So he was allowed to go back to his classes. That doesn't normally happen. And it definitely doesn't happen when that person is in the wrong. So at the end of that school year, as we were getting over things, and again, you have all this in black and white, so I'm not presenting any new information here. His primary bully was given the Student of the Year award, and I asked the principal, how does this happen? And I was given court speak about how it's not really their decision and yada, yada, yada. How does that happen? I get it. People can be charismatic and evil. People can have home problems that make them behave a certain way, and people feel bad about that, so they don't really do what needs to be done. The bully also suffers when it's not addressed, because the majority of the time, the bullies have been bullied. The bullies typically have home problems. Maybe they have behavioral problems. Maybe they have chemical imbalances. Whatever. The bully probably needs help too. And by ignoring what happens, the victim is shown that the organization will not help them. And the bully is shown that they don't have any repercussions for their actions. Right? So how do we fix that? My question at the time to the principal of Oak Brook was, why is there nothing in his record that shows that multiple students have reported this particular individual? And in 2022, to be fair, we had 6 or 7 different students that we had issues with. And by the way, that's why legally we were told that we can't do anything, because it wasn't one issue of gross negligence. So again, I've said that at the school board meetings too, very openly and publicly. He was subjected to chronic negligence. But the law does not protect them against chronic negligence, because that's the way it's written. And additionally, I've had so many people, I've had so many lawyers ask, did he have an IEP? Because that would have changed things. Why would that have changed things? How he was treated and how the organization responded doesn't have anything to do with whether or not he had an IEP. 0. But legally, it's a game changer. Oh, if he'd had an IEP, again, don't want to sue. Maybe if he had an IEP, we could be suing. But I don't want to sue. I want to move forward and fix things. We want Julian back. That's not possible. You can't do that for us. But you can help it not happen to somebody else. And ignoring us publicly is not that kind of help. So, to give you a little bit more of my frame of mind for when I step up to that podium, how we've been treated. And quite honestly, people have told me so many times that they are so impressed with the fact that I don't throw that podium across the room. Trust me, I know that I can, and I've thought about it. But that is not the behavior that I've given you. That's the respect that I've given you, and not had it returned in kind. So when I lash out at a particular board member during a meeting because of the immense hypocrisy, yeah, it's deserved. So I'll go back to the board meeting that started with an open prayer about having the courage to do what's right. How does that sit to me when I hear a group of people praying to have the courage to do what's right, and yet here I am? So does that frame a little bit better where we're at? Because I'd like to frame a little bit better where we need to go. So I'm going to ask for an olive branch. we were told that there were counselors made available right at the end of the school year. But the school never really publicly acknowledged anything. So I'm going to ask that a week from today, Friday, the 23rd of May, 1 year after we lost our son, I would like for Dorchester 2 to hold a vigil, publicly, openly. And I would like for Dorchester 2 to put in the legwork to make it happen. So yes, I'm asking for an olive branch. I would like to also discuss things like the Stop It app, which is not great, but it's something. But the bigger piece that I really want is a review of what happened in our cases. How? Why? Was it just pushed under the rug? Because it was just pushed under the rug. I would like to know how and why, when a family has presented the information but not received the help that we asked for, how do we make that not happen? Right? Because the policy is there. The policy is sound. The anti-bullying policy, I have no problem with that. It just doesn't happen that way. What we need to have is accountability for when it doesn't happen that way. There's nothing further in there that says, oh, by the way, if they didn't, then this. So in all those things, I'm not expecting any real answers on what to do with policy and how we move forward. I know. But for today's conversation, I would like to know whether or not having a vigil next week would be a possibility.
I can't speak for the board.
I understand you can't speak for the board. The board needs to convene.
But no, I'm just saying in general, of anyone that's seated here, during my years of service as an educator, I believe in 1 year, had several students commit suicide. 2 of them were students I had taught. And I don't know what the circumstance was at that time. And to this day, I still don't know, even though I know the father, but that's not a question of asking. He knows me, so he knows to talk if needed to. And I'm saying that in response to your request for a vigil. We didn't have a vigil for them either. And so I think what would happen, the environment that we're living in now, students do things for, and this is not your son I'm talking about, I'm saying in general. They will do whatever they can for whatever attention they need. And if they thought, oh, if I commit suicide, it leads me to think they may have a vigil for me. And I know you're smiling, but
I can understand. So I've already thought around that, but please continue. Yes, I'm smiling because, yes, I've already been down that road.
okay.
Continue.
And so we don't want to, the death of anyone, whether they're 90 or 14 or 12, 8, that is not something that I would like to see, even though I am putting out there as, we're not glorifying the death, but I'm not sure how the younger people will take that. And when I say younger, even as a senior in high school, some of them are very immature. And they do things you go like, and then we'll have people saying, well, they just glorify, and then every time you look, they have a vigil for somebody that dies. So I'm not really sure. Sitting here hearing you say it, I understand what you're saying. If you organize one, I probably not. More than likely, I'll be there. But representing the county, I believe I would have some issues with doing that because of the precedent that it set. Because then somebody else will say, well, my son committed suicide, you didn't do anything for.
Thank you for that. I didn't actually ask for the vigil to be specifically for Julian, but I did ask for it to be on the 23rd.
I misunderstood. I thought
No,
you
that's
meant
good.
just-
I specifically did not clarify because I wanted to see where anybody else would run with it. I intentionally left it a little vague.
Okay. So what, you want a vigil for? What would it be for a vigil?
For all of the students that have been lost to suicide, for their families that have then tried to hold schools accountable for bullying that had gone unaddressed. I covered this in a podcast. I spent 2 hours, 2 excruciating hours researching until I couldn't stand it anymore. I had 22 names, 22 news articles, 22 teenagers, or some that weren't even at their teen years yet, who had been lost to suicide, and the family goes to the school and they ask, what happened? And I've already shown what those responses are.
That all local? I
No.
may stop and ask you a question just for
No, that's fine. And again, so this is one of those things, I was thinking about this earlier. If you're looking at me as an enemy, I hope not, but I would also assume not, because if you were, I would assume that you've done your research and you've watched the podcast to see what I've put out there. So that's good. But again, yes, this was actually globally, but the vast majority were in the United States because those were easier to find the news articles. And I could find, unfortunately, I can find a lot more, right? So I'm not talking about just the 22 that I covered in a podcast episode. I'm talking about actually making change. I have not found a school board anywhere, and I say anywhere, that has actually stood up for what went wrong. They always want to keep it quiet. And again, on the legal side, I understand. I understand that's a can of worms. But why would we change if we think we're doing everything right? Right? If we hold the banner of we're doing everything right, what incentive do we have to change? Oh, wait until you get somebody that can actually successfully sue you. Because that'll make you change, right? That's not where I wanted to be either.
Well, you know what I mean? To be honest, I don't think anyone around this table would say we have done everything right. Having spent 37 years in a classroom, I can always look back and say, well, maybe I need to change this, maybe I need to do that. But until, it doesn't mean I believe that I've been perfect in everything I've done. But what I do may not satisfy you. So that's one of the reasons why we want you to come, is because you had that personal loss. And whatever we can do in order to help other students as well as you and your family, we want to do that. But it doesn't, I guess I'm trying to figure out, what did we do wrong in the sense of, you went up to the school's investigated, and they can only do what they can do. I know a lot of times people believe the school and the school board can do everything. We can't. And even if I'm on that campus, even if I have that child in my room, it's a possibility, I don't know. Kids are they have finesse when it comes to doing some of the things that they do. We do our best. We have folks out there watching. We have our security, SROs walking around watching. And people I've worked with, if there's an issue, we bring the person in. So, 2021, I wasn't connected. I don't believe I keep forgetting how long I've been doing this, but it hasn't been that long. I don't remember that. But I honestly believe if there was even one child in any school even if I didn't teach it at school, I have an issue with that. So, and I know the hurt is there. But at the same time, I'm still trying to figure out what is it you believe that should have been done that wasn't done.
Okay. So I've actually said that at the school board meetings before, right?
No, but I
What-
mean,
what-
we're just sitting here
Right,
talking.
I know. So I'm gonna reiterate that. I've been down hundreds of thousands of thought exercises about what happened. One of the things that I do for a living, and this is actually the first time that I've ever used this term in this way. What we do at work when something goes wrong is a postmortem. We do a postmortem analysis.
Mhm.
This could not be more postmortem.
Mhm.
I haven't seen anything like that. So when I was at the podium a few months ago and I said, why did he not get the help that we asked for? Lack of resources or lack of authority, right? It's not that hard. The district doesn't have it. I get it. Y'all are swamped. I do. I get it. We have a lot of teacher friends who are quite literally saying that they are drowning. And I've already said to this school board before, holding up that banner of we do so much with so little is not sustainable. The district has been at a breaking point for a while. You have a lot of good people that are like still holding on with every last breath. It's another sunken cost fallacy. I get it. You're holding on with everything you got. And I'm not saying that, Act 388 screwed us, right? The money thing, it's terrible. The legislature is not paying attention. From higher up, we don't value education. Yeah, that's a society problem. I'm not asking this school board to fix society. But you're saying any student that has ever asked for help is going to get it. And I'm telling you that's false. That's been our experience. I have already spoken to several other parents who are in a situation like we were in a couple of years ago, and they are being fought by the district. Now, I don't know.
When you said the district, you're talking about the district as in leadership? Are you talking
Yes.
about the schools specifically?
No, I'm talking all the way up to being denied multiple times on, sorry, I've got all the, again, I've forwarded all the emails and everything. So without bringing up their specific names, with this particular family, they were supposed to have had their daughter on homebound, doctor ordered homebound, and they were denied, and they appealed, and they were denied, and they appealed again, and they were denied again.
Because
That
the
doesn't
child
make any
was
sense to
bullied,
me.
Or
Yes, because of bullying. And this was another instance where attendance zones. It screwed up families, right? I get it. It's logistics, it's bus drivers, it's routes, it's drive time, it's maintenance. It has and continues to hurt families when there are no allowances. If that's redrawn, you just have to deal with it. How much did I have to fight? Because Julian should have been going to Ashley Ridge this year. How many hours of my time did it take to just get the district leadership to say, okay, we'll consider? That was a ridiculous amount of effort on my part for something very reasonable. This other family that I have talked about at a public school board meeting got moved from their school where their friends, where their kids had established friends and everything. Then they got moved to another school. I get it, that's a challenge. That did not go well for them. There was bullying. It was reported. It was ignored. It was reported. It was ignored. Their daughter is dealing with massive anxiety attacks, has been to the doctor. The doctor has said, this kid can't deal with what's going on in the school. how does a story like that progress, right? They were fine. They got moved to another school. Things weren't fine. Okay, now they're asking for a different exception, and they're told no. How does that seem like the district is helping every student every day? Our friend that came in and talked about her daughter's experience on the bus that was reported. And then it got worse. And that was reported. This isn't just our story. This isn't just DD2. It needs to change. So by continuing to say that we've been doing it right, it won't change. That's human nature. So how do we change? So with something like a vigil, or I don't know, I can do a presentation at a school board meeting, but I'm just a parent limited to 3 minutes. And yes, I know I said that snarkily, but I've been doing this for a while, so forgive me if I have to control my temper. But I've not been given a platform. It's your platform. What will you do with it?
In a situation like this, I don't think we want to consider it our platform or your platform. One of the reasons we wanted you to come in is share with us, okay, you said the visual is one of the things that you would like to happen. What else would you like to have? What else can we do working collaboratively in order to address the issues as you see them?
I think, just you said that we see you as the enemy. I just want to say that's not true at all. We don't see you as an enemy. We've never seen you as an enemy for as long as I can remember. You know, coming to board meetings for years, and I don't think that's how anyone in this room sees you. That's not how we want you to see us.
That is how I've been treated. To be fair, that's how I've been treated since I've been coming back to school board meetings.
Okay, well, I think the other way to look at that is, I mean, you say you've been respectful. I think coming in and trying to work around the agenda versus non-agenda, that's there for a reason. And can you, I mean, you've clearly tried to work that, you know, into being able to speak when maybe you really shouldn't have been speaking.
There was a clear progression to that, by the way.
Okay, and that's
So-
fine, but I'm just pointing out
Okay.
that there's two sides to it. And again, what I would like to see happen now is, you know, let's not look at what's happened. You know, let's look forward. Let's talk about what we can do to work together from this point on. You know, you mentioned a review of what happened. We have reviewed what happened. So I don't want you to think that we haven't. We have. You mentioned some stuff with the Stop It app. Can we talk about that? You have some concerns with that. Can you share more with us? I mean, that's certainly something we would want to hear. Whatever your thoughts are on that.
From a high level, you absolutely need to have something like that. Whether or not the Stop It app is it, I don't know enough about the company. The company does seem a little bit monetarily motivated.
Well, I can talk a lot about the Stop It app. So I get calls from them. So one thing that I really love about the Stop It app is it's 24/7, 365 monitoring. Anytime anything comes across that involves any kind of violence, any type of self-harm, any type of depression, anxiety, any type of reports like that, within seconds that are popping up on my phone, I get a phone call from Stop It saying, hey, this agent 8, it's usually agent 8 or 9, calling me to let you know that we received this report. Have you had a chance to review it? If I have not had a chance to look at it, they'll read it to me and then ask if I want to get law enforcement involved. If I've already read it, we're already actively on it, I'll say no, we're on top of it, we're already involved. If we haven't done that yet, or it's 1:30 in the morning and I'm getting it, but yes, please send law enforcement in the house. We have actually stopped three different occasions where the parents were contacted and they went and checked on their child was actively in the process of taking steps towards an act of harm themselves. We've also gotten kids within the school that have made that report at school, or someone that made a report on another kid at school saying, hey, they just said they're cutting themselves and they're self-harming. I've been thoroughly impressed with Stop It App and how it acts and works within the context of it. My only wish is that we could get it out there more so that more kids are aware. But we put it on their devices so that they can click on an icon on their school issue device now. So it's there. Sometimes I do get some funny stuff from some of those kids that see it on there and they just want to make, but I'll take that because you look at it and they're like, oh, my teacher didn't let me have my M&Ms or whatever. You're like, all right, delete that one, let that one go. But we've had several instances of reported self-harm and stopped, like I said, 3 instances where either police showed up at the home or admin called the home and said, hey, we got this report, can you check on the kid? And they checked on it and then let us know, yeah, they think that was close. So I've been very, very pleased with Stop It App.
So yes, like I said, high level, I actually think it looks like a very good tool. When I looked at the company behind it, not as impressed, right? And I get it; they're there for money. But there was an app a few years ago. They ended up being fully federally funded. I still haven't found out why they ceased to be, but it was called the Bully Box. They were doing the same thing. They quietly disappeared. I'm pretty sure they got sued for not handling personal information correctly. Right? That's a touchy subject. I get that. I had ownership of 5,000 sailors' social security numbers when I was on the rig. So I get it. Personal information, security. So they had a good thing going. I don't know why they disappeared. I'm pretty sure they got sued into non-existence.
I'll look into that. Maybe they got sued, maybe they got bought out. I'll look into the Bully Box.
Yeah, their website is still active, but it's deserted. It doesn't go anywhere anymore, but obviously they paid it up for a few years, so it's still there.
I think a question that I would have is, what did you like about the idea of Bully Box, or what are your concerns about Stop It that might be, something that we could address either with the company or internally, like in terms of how it works? What are your concerns about that?
That's a good one. So what they started with was really bare bones, and they were getting local grants and things like that because they wanted to give it to schools for very little money. They eventually got federally funded, so they were able to give it to schools, and the schools didn't have to pay for it. So how they started was a little bit, it was a little bit more good faith than the company that does Stop It. And that's fine. Capitalism is what it is.
Was it an anonymous reporting? You have to fill out your name and information you reported, or do you know if it was anonymous?
I haven't been able to get enough information about that. That's a good question, but that is one of the things that I do. It is good and bad, right? It's a double-edged sword, right? The anonymity of the Stop It app can also be abused. Right? You already said, my teacher doesn't let me have my M&Ms, and I get it. You're going to have Boy Who Cried Wolf on there. But what I would like to have verified, because what happened with us is we had a habitual bully who we had reported and was able to just slip through the cracks all year long, right? Probably still, right? They've got a bad home life. They act out a lot, but they're also very charismatic. Okay, what do you do with that? Well, when he assaulted my son, he and his brother assaulted my son, and we reported it. And it was a he said, she said. Okay, but does that go into their record? It should. It doesn't. Because that's how they slip through the cracks.
Do you recall where the incident took place?
Yes, it was in the courtyard at Oak Brook Middle School. The email I sent you has all of that. I asked for the camera, I asked for the video. They said they had just changed their systems, or it doesn't matter. The video didn't exist. And so it was a he said, she said, or he said, whatever, right? And that was end of story. Why was that end of story? Because it wasn't end of story for him, because he brought a knife to school. after that. And then after that knife incident, I asked, why did this happen? I'm not exaggerating. You have it all. So, the question then becomes, it's not that the policies aren't sound. The policy actually is sound. I've reviewed it, I've talked about it. It's that the policy is not being followed. But then, what I hear officially is that, no, the policy is being followed correctly. And when I asked for an explanation of how does this seem thorough, and I get no answers. Because yes, that one came to you. So you know what I'm talking about. Again, I'm not bringing any new evidence here today. This is an open conversation about everything that's happened over years. This is about trying to make sure that this other family that I've been talking to doesn't lose one of their children in the same way. This is talking about the other families that are in that same situation right now, today, who aren't comfortable speaking up because they're afraid it's going to get worse. Because that's the reality. We say that there's no retaliation. We all know that there's retaliation. If you bring it up and it doesn't stick, there's going to be retaliation, right? That's the reality.
From the student.
Yes. Or from the teacher in some other cases, right? Specific to our case, right, it was fear of retaliation from the student, the bully, right? But it's fear of retaliation in whatever form that takes, whether it's the teacher is now singling your child out, whether it's the bully is now more emboldened because, oh, you reported it but nothing happened, right? So that's why they don't speak up. Like, they try, they do the routes they're supposed to do, and then when they don't get the help they think they should be getting, they just get over it. Right? That's what we did.
Just for clarification, I have
Mhm.
a lot of questions as you talk. So you're saying that there is a possibility that we have educators in our community who basically will take on the adversarial point of view with a student that challenges them by saying, I am being bullied, I am being this or that.
You asked if I think there's a possibility. Yes. Do I know of any in person? No, I don't. That's not one that I've come across yet. But do I think that's a possibility? Yes. Has that happened in other school districts? Yes, absolutely, yes. All you got to do is read the news. So to think that it can't happen here is again arrogant. People are people.
They are. And I would never
We
say.
have liked our teachers, but not all of them are good.
But we owe them the benefit of the doubt.
I agree. But
But
when
I
we
believe
get
it
past
would
the
be
benefit of the doubt,
investigated if there was some concern there. I could live with myself if I didn't say, okay, we need to check this out. And I don't believe any of the board members, any of the leadership would say, oh, just. Now, one of my big concern about using the word bully, it has come around from the time I was younger. I could have said I was bullied. They may have said I was the bully. Some of that was just plain old playing around. You know, think, no, I'm just not going to talk to you anymore. That's not bullying. But some kids get the impression, some parents get the impression, they're being bullied because nobody in that group wants to play with them. Find another group. I'm not throwing that out lightly. I'm saying that's some of that inner strength that we as parents, not faulting you, have to help our kids to understand. They may like you today, can't stand you tomorrow. You made perfect A on the road, and here they are struggling with a D. So now they're jealous and mad with you. That is not bullying. That is just jealousy that you will encounter the rest of your life. But this is how you need to deal with it. You find another group that you can basically socialize with and basically enjoy the academic success because they understand and they're enjoying the fact that you've done that. So I'm just throwing it out there we have to, okay, is this really bullying? And that's the thing I've been trying to process whenever something comes up. Okay, is this bullying? Just kids being stupid as they are at a certain age, I was. What is it? And then we go from there. If there's a real case of bullying, then I have an issue with that.
So
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. One of the things that you say is, be careful about saying bullying too much. Well, quite honestly, how are they going to learn what is and isn't bullying if we just keep it quiet all the time?
No, I don't need to be quiet.
I understand,
Okay.
but that's kind of what happens. It gets minimized, right? Teacher, I've got this problem.
And
Ah.
I think that's something we wanted to talk to you about today, that looking at how we educate our students, our teachers, our families, our community about what bullying is.
Bullying versus conflict, it's kind of like what you just said.
Right.
And so, and then how to report it, because I've just taken some notes, the one thing that you're talking about, documentation, that wasn't, all those things were not put in there that we were talking about. And so educating not only our parents, but our students, our teachers, our administrators, and what is conflict, what is bullying, and then what do we do with those protocols? Again, following the policies you said. So, so that's why we're here, trying to come up with some solutions of, how to make it better for everybody involved. And so, what other suggestions do you have for us? You think educating and having parent meetings, for all of our students, bringing somebody in from legal counsel talking about cyberbullying, like you talked about, because they bring that inside with the devices that they have.
Right.
And so, bringing somebody from the outside, like police, we've had a lot of sexting, those things going on, kids sharing pictures and those things.
And that's part of the reason why we have the policy with the phones now.
Yeah.
That should help with those types of things. We want to do more things like that will help to prevent that and to educate.
Yeah, and I think bringing some law enforcement and our solicitors and some of those partners in to talk with our students at the middle schools, even some of our fifth graders and also our high schoolers, and having those conversations so we can prevent some of this. Because what happens, a kid says, hey, I want this picture, the kid gives the picture, next thing you know, that it's out there, then the kid's, like you're talking
Right.
about, facing a lot of scrutiny by friends that they thought were friends.
Yep, I know, it does. It gets very complex, and I get it. We get lost in the weeds. The thing is, when an actual report is made, the jump to quickly minimize it is what most people experience. It is what it is. There's a lot of reports, and a lot of them are, something silly, right? But just because most of them are something silly,
You don't want to
that
that one.
that can't make us numb to the fact that there are real ones that happen, and they need to be treated, with due diligence. And what we experienced was not that. The other families that I've spoken to, what they have experienced has not been that. I promise that there are others just in our little district that don't even see it as worthwhile to start making noise about. That doesn't make it right. Right? Because we talked about this a lot. We made it through the 22 bullying issues. We made it through having our son being a convicted felon. That wasn't right. But we were getting over it. So that's where I'm at this point. I know that it still happens. We were not an outlier. So fixing it doesn't happen by doing the same stuff. Fixing it doesn't happen by not acknowledging what happened with Julie. Right? So I know when I asked about, holding a vigil. And yes, I'm asking the district to coordinate that. I'm talking about actually saying, This is a problem that we acknowledge and we are trying to fix it, rather than not acknowledging that the problem exists.
And when you say that, do you mean acknowledging that bullying exists?
That bullying exists and is not being treated properly. Whether it's through education, lack of access, lack of resources, lack of teacher authority, right? All of those things. But if any of you can look at me with a straight face and tell me that you're doing it right, I'm going to tell you that you're lying to yourself. Full stop. If you can look at me honestly and tell me that today, that Dorchester 2 is doing it right, you are either knowingly lying to me or you are lying to yourself.
I have to go back to what I said before. I don't believe any of us believe we have it down perfectly. It may not even be near perfect. But guess what? I think the teachers that I know, I believe that they tried their best. And that's one of the reasons I got on the board. I wanted to be able to help support teachers in doing what they need to get done.
So, Mrs.
And
Powell,
if it means we have bullies in the schools, and those bullies don't want to basically.
Ms. Powell, with all due respect, I didn't ask if every individual in this room thinks that they are personally doing it right or trying to do their best.
You say the
I'm asking if you think that the district as a whole has been and is continuing to do it right. That's a lie. Again, with us, I have all of the proof. I promise you it did not happen right with us. I have several other families that have come forward since then to me to tell me what's currently happening with their families. And it's not right. It exists. It is here. It is happening. And it's not just here. But can we fix it here? We cannot fix it here if we think that we're doing it right. Not each of us individually. I'm doing my best. I think you're doing your best. I think we're all trying to do good things. But it's not working.
And that's why we're here today, in order to improve things for any other person that feels as though they have been bullied. And as she said, what is it, we want to basically investigate every avenue that you can think of and any others that we research and find out that's going to work. We want to do that. I mean, why else would we be in education if we didn't care about the kids of all people? They're the ones that have the least amount of defense, but we want to be there to help them. But we need to know, because you've been through it personally, whatever suggestions you want to give us and how we can work together in order to bring those things to fruition. And even those parents that you said are going through now, I can't speak for the whole board, but I know there are many of us that would love to be able to probably just hear what they have to say and get their perspective. What is it that we can do legally, and money does matter, afford to do? What is it?
So there's the interesting thing. One, I'm not going to have all the solutions to these problems. No one person is.
We don't expect you to.
Okay? When my own father came to the school board meeting a few weeks ago, and he talked about doing an impact report. How did this impact the teachers, the students, the staff? We've not seen anything that looks like follow-up. We haven't.
May
what-
I say something?
Yes.
I am your biggest fan for DD2. I stand up in my community because I know it matters to support your school systems. I am a former teacher. I'm a music therapist, retired, so I've seen suicide. I worked in a psychiatric facility, so I've seen humanity and what happens and how things are overlooked. He said over and over a word, 2 words, that I see is missing, but I don't know why. I know that my daughter teaches in Oregon and is a principal there. The first thing she said to me was, do they have zero tolerance? And I said, yes, they do. Do they have clear consequences? I said, yes, they do. Do they have a behavior matrix? How schools respond and investigate? I said, I don't know about that. But what I know is I don't see the follow through on so many things. And I'm out in that community trying to say, quit beating up on DD2, comparing it to Berkeley County. You don't even understand, you don't come to the school board meetings, so how can you speak? The follow through to educate everybody about some of these issues. And I'm not wanting to say that you tried to hide this. I did not feel like that. I know how strong he is. I know what they have been through. At one point, I was trying to recommend him to be on the school board, and then, excuse me, but hit the fan. What I see is that the follow through has to go. I hear him telling exactly what he sees. Boom. And then how is that follow through, and how is it recorded? How are you recording these incidents? How you're keeping track of it? How are you looking at that? I don't think that's happening. If it is, I apologize.
I think it is happening, but the hard part is when we're dealing with student issues, we can't share personal information about students.
But you can share statistics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what kind of statistics are
The incidents of bullying, the incident of death, suicides, the incidents of teachers being involved in this personally that could handle it. Because I taught school, I don't even know how you handle what you do. But there has to be some system that goes beyond one man telling everybody. I don't know how that works, but that has to happen, and it can be done statistically. I'm not knowledgeable enough about that, but I want you to have protection. So you can say to this man who suffered and his wife and lost their child that you have things that you could say, yes, we did.
well, and
But-
to be honest with you, we do have that. I mean, the board sat down with the administration, the people who investigated this incident, and in executive session, because again, it's a student issue, so it's not something we can share, but it was all documented. It was pages and pages, and we went through all of it.
You did.
Yes, but we can't share that.
You can't share by name and student name.
Because other students were, I mean, there was a lot of information in there that we absolutely, that has to stay confidential.
I understand.
So,
But there's some way, and I don't know what that answer is, because I'm torn. I'm here
sure.
for,
Well, and I appreciate what you're saying, because I do think, we appreciate your support, and you're right in saying that we're not trying to hide anything. We are not. We are trying to protect the private, personal issues of students that we have to by law, but we aren't trying to hide it. And so thank you for that, and thank you again for your support, because we greatly appreciate it.
and I support where he is and where Lisa. Both. I'm torn. And that's why I want to be here, because I will support them. I will continue to support, but it has to find a new answer. I don't know what that is. One of the things my daughter said to me was, do you have elementary and middle school behavioral teams to train?
So I can talk a little bit about that. And I think this is one thing that is difficult for us to really talk about in public. And I would like to see if we can find a better way to educate folks on what actually happens when something comes through. So every school has a behavioral threat assessment team. Those teams are made up of administrators, school psychologists, guidance counselors, the SRO, if they have school security, and anybody else the team thinks needs to be involved in the behavioral threat assessment. They have a team. So when something comes through that is violent, generally violent in nature, whether it's violence towards other children, violence towards themselves, the threat assessment team conducts an assessment. That threat is then given a label, whether it's transient, serious, or whatever the case may be. And then depending on how that threat is labeled after the team convenes, and it may involve the parents in that a lot of the times as well. So then, depending on how that threat is determined to be, as a kid just saying, "I'm going to kick you, kick your butt because you took my football," that's going to be one level. A kid saying, "I'm going to bring a gun to school next week and I'm going to take it from my parents' house," that's going to be a whole other level. So they address that. Once it's addressed, it is thoroughly documented. This is where it really gets difficult. Is a child may make a report that they were threatened, or they were bullied, or that something happened, and that student, the alleged perpetrator, is good. The threat assessment's going to be done, and it's going to be thoroughly documented as to what happened. And I see it all the time when I go and look at discipline for kids that I'm dealing with on my end, and I'll see, like I was dealing with one last week that goes all the way back to elementary school. Hit, kick, push, cease and desist. They were spoken to about interactions with other students. And it's all logged in there. And the seriousness of that event is logged in there. And then the consequence from that event. I spoke to the parents. We met with the parent. We counseled the parent and the student. We suspended the student. We recommended the student for expulsion. Whatever that was is logged in. And it goes with that student all the way from kindergarten until they graduate from high school. Those log entries are there. So if little Preston was involved in something in second grade, he made a threat to somebody, and he did it again in fifth grade, now it's escalated to something in seventh grade, those are all in there log entries. But we cannot discuss those things, even with the victim's family. We can't discuss how all that is done. So a lot of times I hear folks say, well, we reported this and you didn't do anything. No, we didn't tell you what we did because we can't tell you. Because we, by law, by FERPA, we can't explain that. So that's where it gets really difficult to me. And I hear, well, this family told me this, and this family told me that. Well, this family is telling you their version of their side of what happened. What actually happened, and what is documented, and all the steps that we took along the way, we can never tell you that. And so I hear, because I know some of these families, and I know what we've done as teams, how much time and effort and manpower we spent to deal with these issues, but we can never go through and explain that because we're bound by law, and honestly, we don't want to. We don't want to, but we're bound by law, so we can't anyway. So some of what I hear, just simply, not from your side, I'm saying in some of these other instances, when I hear things come through, it's just simply not accurate, and it's not correct, and it's false.
So I can appreciate that. A couple of quick things, because there's been a lot said. So, Dr. Wembley, when you said that there was an executive session about our situation, I'm at a loss for why we can't be informed. Again, names, dates redacted, right? But why, when I'm asking for what happened, am I given a cold shoulder, right? That does not seem right. So, Preston, to your point, when you're saying, these incidents, they happen, they get logged into something that stays with their records, from little Preston in second grade all the way on up. I would like for you to review what happened with our family in 2022 and tell me whether or not that's accurate, because I don't believe that that's what happened with us. And while that is a system that is in place and functioning, it is not every student every day. Right? And that's, I know I've said this before a bunch. Lack of resources or lack of authority, right? Either they didn't have the person to do it, or they didn't have somebody that had access to do it, and they moved on to the next thing. And it went under the rug, right? But when it gets officially brought up, there's emails, there's whatever it was in Class Dojo app, and that's another thing that was actually kind of terrible with communications, the fact that we keep changing platforms all the time. That's terrible. And I get it, there's always the next best thing. But between Dojo and Foursquare and Power School and Blackboard and so
Are you saying we have too many, or they keep changing or?
Both. There's no real source of truth, right, when it comes to something like that. And that's exactly what we had, because it took me a long time to even find where we had all of those bullying reports that we did in 2022. Right? When we came back to DD2 after having been in Connections Academy because of all the COVID stuff, and you know that I was there during all the COVID stuff too, trying to make sure that the school could actually stay in session. So when we took our hiatus from DD2 and then we came back to DD2, and these things started happening at Oak Brook Middle, and we reported them, I had to go back and find, where did we report it? On what platform did it go to? Was it? That shouldn't have been a thing either. There should be a clear, direct path for communications concerning something like that. We shouldn't change platforms every couple of years. So yeah, to those pieces. Hey, and I think I sent this in an email. I'm pretty sure that you've discussed us in executive session. But I don't know what happened there. So from my perspective, I get nothing. So how can I see it any other way when I literally get nothing?
Ms. Graham, can you share with him why he couldn't get a report? Because there were other people other than just him in the report?
Sure. I think as Dr. Rumberly shared, I mean, there was a lot of identifying information about other students in the information that was shared with the school board. And so, as we've talked about before, that is one of the reasons that we can't share student records as well. When you have questions about where things are documented, as Preston said, those things are typically documented with the alleged perpetrator. And so that is obviously information that we can't share about another student, what their discipline was, what the outcome of the threat assessment was, those sorts of things. And so I know that feels difficult for you all because you can't get sort of closure on what happened with the other student. But in the same way that we protect your students' privacy from other people, it is the same for other students. And federal law doesn't permit us to share that information.
I can appreciate that. What we did get when we asked for all of Julian's records were the interviews that were conducted with all of the information, the personally identifying information redacted. Not all of it. So whoever went through doing the redactions wasn't dotting the T's and crossing the I's. But right, that was already, we already knew all of that anyway. So obviously I'm not going to, wave the flag of you sent me somebody else's personal information. Okay, I'm not going to do that. But it still doesn't make sense to me why it can't be shared with personally identifying information redacted. Beyond that, in 2022, the 2022-2023 school year, how, if the system is working the way that it should, that we reported a physical assault and this particular individual was given a citizenship award at the end of the year. That does not make sense, right? There's something missing there. And
time had transpired, and the reason I'm saying that is sometimes student behavior changes so much for the better that they are recognized as being a better person. And I don't know what happened in your incident, in your situation, but I do know that we have students that do make this transformation, and so why would we not give them?
So this is anecdotal. Bear with me, because I'm going to relay to you what was relayed to me, because I was not at that awards ceremony because of a particular school board member, and I couldn't go to Oak Brook Middle School. So anyway, I was not at that award ceremony. It was the same school year in which the incident happened that the award was given, and at the award ceremony, it was relayed to me that when they announced this particular student's name, it was to the shock and awe of the student body. Visibly, kids looking back and forth. Did they say that name? Murmurs going through the crowd. So
to you,
in this
that was like
particular
a slap in
incident,
the face.
I will tell you that no, this particular student's behavior had not changed for the better. This is not one of those stories. So again, I can appreciate personally identifying information not being allowed to be shared, but with our particular story, I feel that things are not being shared with us for fear of legal liability.
And I do just want to clarify that I think the information that was shared in executive session was information that you had received, additional information from other students' records that cannot be shared with you all, and then a conversation with the administration. So I don't want you to leave with the impression that there are other documents out in the world that were reviewed that you have not been given. I think a lot of the information that the board received came from conversations with the administration and a review of the timeline of the events, and the documents that you all have, not necessarily other documents that you haven't seen or are not aware of. So I just want to clarify that.
That's
I
fair.
don't recall exactly the documents that were reviewed, but my memory of the situation is that it was all the documents.
What I would expect after something like that would be that we would be given an executive summary of what happened.
But we can't discuss what happens in that's the law. So, but what Ms. Graham is saying is correct. What was given to us, what was shared with us, you already have.
I do
So there's
understand that.
nothing that was trying to be kept from you. It was just so that the board could review and understand.
No, it's just that
So that's why I'm saying we did review. You said, we did review.
So what has been not given to us is any follow-up. Right?
I think you have received follow-up from the administration at school, correct? And so,
Received follow-up. Check in the box, yes. Received adequate follow-up, absolutely not. I can summarize that very easily. Did we receive follow-up? Yes. Did I say very clearly it was not sufficient? Yes. Did I get any follow-up after saying it was not sufficient? No. Again, that's all there.
But is it because it wasn't something that could be shared, which is what both of them have already said? And
if it was in regards to another student, it couldn't be shared. Everything else, was shared. You said yourself that the information was shared with you.
I do agree. So let's go to, we've been talking mostly about the 2022 incident. Let's talk about the April 2024 incident. The cyberbullying. That we were left in a wait and see hold pattern. Again, let me remind you that our son was cyberbullied and then was reported to be threatening violence against the school falsely. Our son was suspended. The investigation as to whether or not he made those claims was completed in one day. That seems legitimate to me. It was very easy to determine that he didn't actually say any of those things. It was very easy to determine that he was the victim in that situation. However, the follow-up to that was a few interviews, which I did receive, that hit a dead end very quickly. And when I asked if anything else was being done, I was told it was a wait and see situation. That does not seem adequate to me. That does not seem thorough to me.
I don't know, so I have to ask.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was cyber bullying, was that reported to law enforcement?
Yes.
And did they give you a report as to what their findings were?
Yes, I have those. You have those reports. I have those reports.
No, I'm just asking
So,
you
yes.
if they followed up and gave you whatever.
They did, which even to the Somerville Police Department, I told them that that was inadequate.
What
It
they
was.
gave you was an error,
No, what they gave me was incomplete.
incomplete.
They basically said, interviewed student, gave us a name for another student, interviewed another student. They didn't know who. The end, right? And I know that's grossly summarizing the content, but that's exactly how that goes. We did an interview. They said they heard it from another person. We interviewed that person. They said they didn't know who said it. Okay, and I hate to be that person, but that's where that student is now the person that started it. Because if you can't tell us who started it, then you started it. But that's not how that was handled. That's not, it just ended. Students airdropped an embarrassing picture during school hours on school property. And then the following day, started rumors that the victim of this cyberbullying was going to shoot up the school. I very clearly told all of this to Oak Brook Middle and told them to take it seriously because you have bullies that are trying to actually curate a school shooter. That was minimized. Flat out, that was minimized. They didn't take me seriously when I said, you have bullies in your school that are trying to create a school shooter. Because that's exactly what had happened. Start off with an embarrassing thing. Start a story. Make sure you do it to a person that you already know is on the edge. It was formulaic. What did I get from the school? We're going to wait and see.
I'm just curious. What should they have done that would have said they took you seriously? What do you believe they should have done?
That the investigation should have been completed until they found the responsible parties. And actually, we understand that one of those responsible parties would have come back to one of Julian's friends. Not the only responsible party, the person that shared the photo that shouldn't have been shared, right? So the person that shared the photo that was supposed to have been deleted, that shouldn't have been shared, that person's name would have come up. We already knew that. But whoever was actually doing this with the intention of trying to see if they could create a school shooter, that person is still in your schools. Full stop. I was not taken seriously. Just a month after that incident, and Julian's no longer with us. Do I think that's a direct causation? Probably not. But I promise you it had something to do with it, because his mental health was suffering for years based on the fact that he was never really taken seriously. So again, it's not the policy, it's the handling of the policy. It's the direct minimizing of legitimate complaints, because I know that there's a flood of them. I know that the teachers are absolutely scraping for every last minute they can get, because I know that they work after they're off the clock. I know that they handle personal issues between students that they shouldn't have to deal with. I get it. I know that there's a lot going on. And yet, we still need to do better. So, again, no, I don't have the direct answers. Yes, I think that the Stop It app is a good tool. The best one, not sure. I haven't done all that research, right? But as long as you do have it, just like you were saying, it's on their school issue devices, that information needs to be out there a lot, right? They need to be encouraged to have it on their personal devices so that they can use it not during school hours. And I get it. I know that that's not exactly equitable because not everybody has a smartphone. I understand it, and I can't fix that, but I can say that just because you don't have a smartphone doesn't mean that somebody else with a smartphone shouldn't have that app. Okay, so as long as we're on the same page there. Now the whole personal devices and school property, we're going to disagree on that one. But it is what it is. They're already not supposed to be on their phones during class time. But I think they should actually have their devices on them if they have them. For a whole lot of good reasons instead of, yes, it's going to be bad reasons too. We all understand that it's going to be bad reasons, but just because there are bad behavior, just because there are bad actors doesn't mean that we need to take resources away from good actors, right? And I get it. The cell phone policy, it's above the district, but the district can choose how they implement it and how they handle it. But yes, the Stop It app, absolutely. The source of truth, right? We need to have a direct method for reporting this, following up on it, knowing that some action happened with the information redacted as appropriate, but they need to know that something happened, right?
So that would be to the parent or
That would be to whoever made the
Whoever's-
report.
directly.
Whoever made the report needs to have a follow-up on that report. Even if it's just completely bogus, they need that follow-up that, yeah, you reported this, we looked into it, and let's have a talk about what really happened because I think you misunderstood the situation, right? They need that follow-up. The bullies that are actually engaging in bullying activities need to be held accountable because that makes them suffer as well. Because they might be acting out because the home life is bad. And I understand you can't fix everybody's home life either. But ignoring it doesn't help.
Well, I thought you brought out some really good points, and those are things that we would look at acting on in order to improve what we're doing. And I think anytime the community can help us in this endeavor, it makes it a better place. So that's one of the things that you have done. Mom, is there anything you want to say?
Oh, listen, I am not the talker in this relationship. I'm sorry.
Actually, what's funny is you are the talker in this relationship, but when it comes to public speaking, that's me.
The other thing, in platforms, you talked about Class Dojo and how that's going. So we went to Parent Square this year. We're trying to get away from Class Dojo, so now teachers and coaches, they can now go through the app for Parent Square, because what was happening is, again, trying to keep students safe. So if we have somebody that could be a coach and have an inappropriate relationship with a student trying to text, and if they're doing it on their personal phones, we can't get those records. However, if it's through the Parent Square app, we get to see all those records. So we're trying to have everything go through that. And like you're talking about, we can do that with parents, with teachers, any of those things, then it becomes a record for us, if that makes sense. Then it's not, lost in cyberspace, nobody knows what's going on. And the other thing to address what you said as well is that putting things into Power School. If I have a conversation with you about whether it's bullying or conflict, then I documented it, who I had it in there with, then it shows there's been something there. And then it can say a phone call, like you're talking about, a follow-up call. I talked to Mr. Brocker, if that makes sense. And so I'm hearing you there. The other thing, you brought up a point about, discipline matrix. Those are things that we are working on currently right now.
We have them.
We have them
We're
right now.
we're the present
We're
in
almost
the
done.
middle of updating them, but that bullying has been on them and will continue to be on them, but we did review.
Because
this year.
what we have seen throughout the district, not just bullying, but other incidents for discipline, they're different in different buildings. And so we want to be very consistent in that. So we did see that across the district, not, for hit, kick, push and all those things. So then we're all on the same page. And so those are going to be sent out for next year. And so we definitely see what you're talking about there. Bullying reports. We do have a bullying report that parents actually fill out. I'll just be very transparent. We've had one not too long ago, and the district office gets involved, and we do a thorough investigation when it comes to that. So there are processes and procedures in there, and they do work when they are reported. But again, if people don't know they're out there, you can't do it, if that makes sense. Something with the same app as Stop It app. So those are things that we're trying to improve our processes as well on those things. I hope that makes sense. But again, you don't want to be having these conversations with you because of what's happened with your son, and I apologize. And so we want to be able to improve on these things.
So to the apps, the multiple apps. I don't think any of the families really care what app, just that it's
Done.
that it's
Right.
consistent. right? Just like you said, between the different buildings, maybe they're reporting in, in different ways. That shouldn't be a thing either. It should be very clear, very straightforward. If you need to report this, this is how you do it. I mean, we've got that for book challenges, but we don't have that for bullying. That's a serious comment about the state of how we handle things in general, and why I'm saying this is such a huge gap that has existed, still does, but y'all can get better about it. One of the things that I would like to see is that the school board, as a group, addresses what I've been trying to get across for the last several months. Because at the last school board meeting, and I made the comment, I get it, you're not allowed to directly respond to public comments during the board meeting. I understand why that's there, and I actually agree with it. But you should get together as a school board and address whatever comments were made at the previous school board meeting at the next school board meeting. Whatever happened to meeting minutes? I honestly don't know because I can't find them.
We actually talked about that at the last board meeting. Just clarifying where they are was one of the things that they are in there. They're in board docs
Under meeting minutes?
under the consent agenda. Because when we approve the consent agenda at the meeting, it actually is an approval of the last board meeting, the previous board meetings minutes. That's part of what that
That's good.
yes. So if you're looking for the meeting minutes from a certain meeting, you go to the one after that when we would approve those minutes, the next one. And
Okay.
and
I will take a look at that, but I'll tell you, when I was on board docs, I did not find anything that was clickable with more information.
Under the consent agenda.
Yeah, like literally clicking on everything.
And I will share that if you're doing it on your mobile phone, it looks very different. I would suggest trying to use a computer, because I've tried to do lots of things on board docs on my phone, and it's not very.
It's more difficult. You can
mobile
do it,
friendly.
it's there, because I've done it, but it is more difficult to
Yeah,
navigate.
it works a lot
So
better.
I was doing that on desktop.
Okay. But, yeah.
I will typically not reach out for IT help because it should be pretty apparent.
Yeah.
And so when I go into board docs, and quite literally on a desktop, and things that should have some more information below them just don't. Like, that has happened a lot.
So I will clarify, so I know that, and I'm happy to show you on my device if that's helpful. It's not the little document that's like an attachment. It actually says view minutes, and it's, so is it helpful if I show you?
Sure. I mean, it doesn't tell me why it didn't work the last time I tried to do exactly what you're saying, is click on view minutes. Because I assume you're saying click on view minutes.
It's in the agenda.
Great.
So
So,
this past more, didn't she put a little note on there about how to go and access?
so for example, if you go, I just picked a regular meeting and you click on approval of
Nope.
consent
Close
agenda.
my computer so you can read it.
And then you, sorry.
You're good?
Then you just click right here where it says view minutes, and then they pop up.
That's interesting because that was not available to me last time I tried that. I can't say why.
Yeah, I'm
How
not
long
sure.
ago was that?
They've been
Couple
there
weeks
since
ago?
we switched to board docs. That's how
Oh,
the minutes have been housed. And then if you're
So they're
looking
the
for
next
minutes
The
of
next week.
like a committee meeting or something, they
Yeah,
are
the
attached
committee
as
meeting
an
minutes
attachment.
I've been able to find, but yeah, when I didn't find an attached document under there, I was trying to click on view minutes. And
See, and
on
that's-
desktop,
and
I
that's
apologize, I'm
one
not
way.
sure what might have been happening. That's how we've been storing the minutes since we went to board docs.
Okay.
They are not, I'm not sure. I don't know.
yeah, I'll
Yeah. It is
Take
in
that
the,
as a
in
mulligan.
the future meeting because minutes don't become minutes until they're voted on the board.
right,
Yeah.
agreed.
So that is one way that I can send to the community that never shows up to know what the
Yeah.
heck is going
Yeah,
on.
yes.
Yes.
And that's what I'm always looking for, because now that I'm usually challenged, I have plenty of time to do that kind of stuff.
We also live stream all of our board
Oh,
meetings.
I know
So
that.
So
they're
that's,
recorded, so they can
I
always
need
go
to
back
put
and
it
watch.
in front of their
Sure.
face, because
Yes.
trying to tell them, don't forget live streams.
Yeah,
Forget
it's
it.
faster to look at the minutes, I agree.
Yeah.
And Mr. Brock, you brought up a good point at one of the meetings, in the superintendent's report, how you would click on one thing and then it would have other things in there rather than having individual. so you knew what they were.
Yeah.
And so we have done this, we're gonna try to be more transparent, so if Christy can pull that up so you can see everything that will be in there.
Yeah, that was one of the comments is that, in the superintendent's report, there are presentations. There should be presentations that we can view
Yes.
ahead of time so that if we want to speak about whatever's in the superintendent's report, that we can review it so we can speak about it.
Be more specific, so it's-
Yeah, we're working on that, and so we want to make sure that you can see each item. Now, some of the items obviously will have to be in executive context.
Yep, understood. So on things that need to have an executive copy
Yeah.
and a public copy, there should still be a public copy.
Thank you for coming.
I'm
Thank
so
you so
glad.
much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, we appreciate you.
Yeah, yeah,
I asked her, she said she was good. I said the same thing.
Because what was happening, I'm not gonna say anything, but we're gonna try to do a better job. So,
Okay, so as far as the board meeting arrangement, yes, I know the game that I was playing. And obviously you knew the game that I was playing too. But the thing is, the way that there are two separate public comment sections seems kind of like back of the bus.
I don't think that's the intention at all. I mean, I really don't. It makes sense. Like if there's something listed on the agenda that we're going to be discussing or taking action on, we need to hear the comments about that prior to making a decision. I mean, because you're right, we can't respond, but it doesn't mean we aren't listening and considering what we're hearing.
Right,
So
I
I
do.
think that's why it's set up that way.
I do understand that, but since the COVID days, have we really had like a rush on people trying to speak at board meetings?
You know, I'm not saying we have a rush on it, but I think it's just that.
When's the last time we've actually had a full list of like, we've got 20 people all wanting to speak?
As soon as we take it off, we'll have that rush.
I will just say that policy has been in place for a very long time, so I don't want you to feel that it was reflective to try to push.
Oh, no,
certain
no,
issues
Yeah,
to the
no,
front.
I mean,
that has
nothing
been
to.
I do.
long-standing
I understand
policy.
that existed well before I started playing the game of I'll take your agenda item and I'll bring it back to bullying. But when I went to, a family asked me to go speak at the Berkeley County School Board meeting because they were getting the same kind of treatment that we were getting. And so I went to go speak at the Berkeley County meeting. Well, they only have one public comment section. It doesn't matter if you're speaking about the agenda or not. And it happens before the majority of the body of the meeting. Back in the COVID days, and I said, hey, you should really have public comments after the awards. That way, when you have people here for awards, they can do their awards thing before you have to listen to these nasty people. So I'm really happy that that changed a few years ago. But additionally, and yeah, I'll listen to counter statements, but I don't think that if you merge them into one, that you're suddenly going to have a rush on people trying to speak at school board meetings.
No, I don't, that's not my fear at all. I think giving the two different opportunities, potentially, if there is an issue that a lot of people want to come and speak on, it just leaves the room for more people. Does that make sense? Because you're right, it may not happen every meeting, but I do think occasionally we have agenda items where a lot of people want to speak. And so then it just leaves an extra space for other people to have room as well. Because there are limits, there are time limits. So
I do, but I mean, so.
But again, it's certainly, I've never felt like it was set up to deter people from coming to speak. Just a more, housekeeping type of thing.
I do. I get it as more of a housekeeping type thing. But so if we look at this holistically, the amount of time for people to speak at a public meeting doesn't change. Combining the two doesn't change anything either. What happens is when I have to wait to the end of the meeting to speak, the physical audience is a whole lot smaller. And so when you have somebody that wants to speak about something that is important, but it's not on the agenda, the physical audience in there is nowhere near what it is after the superintendent's report and the facilities report and the financial report. Like, all those people have to be there for that stuff, and then a lot of them leave.
But you're implying that you're really coming to speak to the physical audience, but I think most people are coming to speak to the board. We're certainly still paying attention to both. I mean,
I don't directly disagree, but again, this is coming from months worth of me being back at the school board meeting and having to play silly games.
Sure. we don't want you to have to play silly games. I would much rather us be collaborating, working together, communicating. That's what we want. And I think as Mr. Doherty kind of summed up, we've had some good conversation here. We've got some good takeaways, things that we genuinely want to look at and consider. I think, like Ms. Powell shared, and we all feel, and we're always open to looking at opportunities, and that's in regard to anything when it comes to educating these kids or how we can do better. We're always going to be open to that. Every opportunity. That's why we're all here, and that's genuine. I feel like one thing that I'm really excited about is just an increase in communication, awareness, education. I think all those things are certainly on the table, and we appreciate your willingness to sit down with us.
Well, I do appreciate that, and I do look forward to working together. I do want to reiterate the fact that this isn't new. This is not the first time that I've addressed the school board as a whole that things are broken. That was 2.5 years ago.
I mean, sadly, Mr. Brocker, we live in a broken world.
I get it, but do we have to have a broken school district?
No, we don't. I mean,
That's
why do
it.
you think we're all sitting here? Why do you think we ran for school board? People in here work for this district? Because no, that is not what we want. That is what we work every single day to not have. Every single day. We don't want that. No. I promise you.
So yes, I absolutely look forward to things getting better. I am, of course, disappointed that it's taken this long to get to this point right here. And so I would like to potentially hear something from the board as a whole at the next school board meeting about how these things are being addressed. And yes, I'm still going to leave that on the table. I would greatly appreciate if there were a vigil held to acknowledge that this is a problem and that you're trying to make it better.
Well, I will say I agree with what Ms. Powell said about. I think we have to be careful because we don't want to glorify or to have other students look at suicide as a way to get attention. And I have
agree,
children,
and that's a tough
I
one.
think that they, they don't always understand. There are kids who will see it that way. And, to me, that's just, if there's even the smallest potential that it could look like to another child, here's a way to get some attention. Even if that doesn't make sense to us as adults, it is a worry, it is a concern that we have to think about.
I do understand that. I have read an obscene amount of adolescent psychology. Probably no surprise. For the ones that have suicidal ideations, there's already an attention aspect of it. And I understand the fear in doing something open and public, that somebody gets delusions of grandeur, that they're going to have this big benefit. But the reality is that is extremely minor. And I do understand that there's a chance that somebody gets it in their head that will be their big finale. I also understand that there's an even greater risk that not addressing it openly and publicly means that it is alive and well in the underbelly of what people don't like to talk about in our society. I understand that's a whole lot bigger than holding a vigil at a school. And I understand that it's a whole lot bigger than somebody that already has some mental health concerns, that they have tendencies towards self-harm. But the bigger problem is that we don't talk about it enough. So, while I do appreciate that there's potential backlash on it, that is nowhere near as much as what is potentially gained. So I'll just leave you with that for food for thought.
May I throw this one out? Suppose someone's child did commit suicide as a result, that small possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be okay?
No,
No, it wouldn't.
but I also can't prevent that by doing it or not doing it.
Okay, what I'm saying.
But what I can do is I can hand out guitar picks all over the place. And I tell you that so far, these have saved 2 lives.
I commend you for that.
So, while I understand the aversion to doing something public, I've quite literally stood on a stage in front of thousands of people and told Julian's story. And what I got after that was dozens of people reaching out to me through the website, thanking me for opening up conversations that they have not been able to have for years. So I understand that there's an aversion to doing this because there might be something bad happening. Oh, sorry. New tattoo. And I have a tendency to put the elbow down. I understand that there's a chance, right? There's a non-zero chance that somebody takes that as their idea. I understand that there is an assurity that it helps so many.
And I don't doubt that it would. What I would say is, like I said initially, if you have a vision, and I'm definitely in town, I'll be there. Even if I'm there as Cynthia, or I'm there as a school board member, but I'll be there. Just like I would be there for anything else that I can be there for when it comes to the functioning and the wholeness of our students, our teachers, those that work with us. And anybody else could come, and you are not limited. I would just personally have a problem with whatever it is that you might decide you want to share. Then they're saying that, okay, the board is sanctioning that. And I just don't feel that that's something we could, because I don't know what you're gonna say, to be honest. But the bottom line is that, no, let me
I've
finish.
shared that
But
transparently
let
for
me
years. Go ahead.
Whatever it is that you're saying is being said out of love for your child and other children. With that in mind, I can be there. I want to be there. But if it came to a vote, unless there was some major change, I would say to the board members, personally, I don't think I can sanction this as a board member, but I will go be there because I understand the cause. And I want to make sure that we influence as many people as we can. Suicide is never the answer. It isn't. It may feel as though, but it isn't. When you hand those out, if they're going to make a difference, I'll even hand some of those out with you. But I'm just saying, as a board, I can't feel that right now. I'm not feeling that right now.
I can appreciate that. And again, with all due respect, that was a very legalese answer. So you're saying that you would trust me to share this story so long as the school is not involved.
I'm not saying they can't be involved. I'm just saying as long as we're not the person sponsoring.
So the school won't sponsor, okay?
I'm not saying they won't. I'm just saying individually.
I get you. So what you're saying is you would not vote for the school to sponsor something like that for the reasons that you just said, that essentially equate to you don't trust me to do the right thing if the school is the one footing the bill, but you trust me to do the right thing regardless. I know. I just took what you said and I told you how I interpreted it,
Okay.
right? It's a tough nut to crack. I get that. The school doesn't want culpability. I get that. I'm asking the school, I'm asking the district, I'm asking the organization to make the effort.
So we have another suicide, God forbid, and that parent wants to have a visual, they want the school board to basically sponsor that visual. We should do it for every person that comes, because a lot of times when you look at, I personally, when I look at what decisions we make, it needs to be one that we are willing to make and able to make for any other person. Other than that, I show you favoritism, whereas somebody else come up a year later and say, well, we want a visual, and I don't mind having it. But again, you are putting the district and wanting the district to sponsor it.
So 2 things. One, yes, I actually do think that the school should hold a vigil for anybody that we lose, because we kind of do, just willy-nilly. Yes, I do think that the school should have a vigil when a student is lost. Car accident, sickness, suicide. There should be acknowledgement, right? Back to that whole impact statement thing, right? When one of their classmates is no longer there with them, that affects them, right?
And I agree, there should be acknowledgement, but at that level, and then I'm gonna be quiet because I feel I'm talking too much, but at that level and to where you want us to go with it, as I'm seated here today, I can't say I would vote yes. The entire board might say yes. I don't know. But if they do, that's okay. I'm still gonna be there. But then I'll be there as Cynthia the citizen.
I get you on that. So the second point, the first point was yes, I think that should be done for everybody. The second point is I didn't ask this to be done for Julian, just on that date.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that's.
So I wasn't asking for favoritism. I was asking for the organization to put forth the effort.
And I would like to see, and I've thought about this for a while, even before I probably was on the board, that when we lose a child is no longer here, that we send some type of acknowledgement. That's just the way I am and believe that we need to do as a community. There's a community member that has, been there. I think we need to acknowledge that person is no longer here, because we're still small enough to be able to do that. But that's just where my line is. Not right, not wrong, personal.
I can appreciate that. But yes, so the app, the straightforward, consistent reporting, the follow-up, the school board following up on comments that are made at subsequent meetings from the previous meeting, acknowledgement of I forget his name, the fellow about the tennis courts. Oh my goodness.
But also, just so you know that, a lot of times, it's not necessarily a school board member, it might be a school board member, sometimes it's someone from the district or school, and people will reach out to those people who make public comments. But I just want you to know, it's not that we're not ignoring people who come for public comments.
I know, so what I'm saying is the transparency part of it. Go ahead and say, yes, these comments were made at the last meeting and this is what we did about it. These comments were made at the last meeting. We totally don't agree with that because that person's insane. Right? Whatever it is.
So you want a response to whatever discussion was made by the person.
Agreed. Rather than just approval of consent agenda, discussion of meeting minutes from. It wouldn't take very long. There's not usually that many comments. This ain't COVID days. Right. Back when Mr. Ken was talking about teaching the Constitution, right? Every board meeting for the better part of 2 years, talking about teaching the Constitution. He'd get up and he would read a little part of the Constitution, right? I never heard any acknowledgement of what he was there trying to do. Again, whether or not you agree with it, but just public acknowledgement of who had been there to voice their concerns and what the school board, as a group, is or is not doing about it. Like simply saying, thank you, next. That's not it. Flat out, that's not it.
Well, I can say that school's pathology. And we can't decide just two board members here, so.
I get that, and there was a time where I would have been on the board with you. But thanks, Moms for Liberty.
Well, I appreciate your support when you were
Won't
there.
go down that road any longer, but yes, I withdrew my petitions when we had too many candidates and too few spots.
But we appreciate you.
So, yep, those thoughts that I've shared, those are things that I would like to see some kind of action on. Not to say you got to do what I say. Never once is that it. But something.
Yeah. And we appreciate you being here.
Any closing thoughts?
You don't make-
Okay. No,
You don't want to say not one word.
I'm
She
sorry.
always had a few.
And I will say from my standpoint, just because one of my key points that we follow up, we have a meeting with Stop It at the end of every year to talk about how the numbers have increased and what that looks like, what they're seeing in other places, so that we can compare what we're seeing, what they're doing, what they see nationally, so that we can make sure we are pushing that information out to as many people as possible. So we'll continue to do that. We'll let folks know about Stop It and that it's available to their students. And also they can download the app on the phone. And the second part, I think for my part, is at the beginning of every year, we have an administrator symposium where I get from all the administrators and talk about different things. I think one of the key points that I took from you is just to make sure that even though we can't discuss the situation, what we did with the students specifically, there's nothing stopping us from saying, we got your call, we investigated it, we involved the police, we involved the administrators, we're taking all appropriate actions and following through, let the reporter know that, hey, we did handle it, we did take it seriously, we involved these people, we can't discuss it any further, but we're handling it.
Right, that all sounds very reasonable. The bigger part of that is we didn't take these actions, and here's why. Because that's what we didn't get. We got, why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? Nothing. Right? So yes, follow up on what actions were taken, but also, more importantly, follow up on why actions weren't taken. Right? Because in order for me to understand why an action wasn't taken is hugely important. Fun fact about the metrics, though, on the whole Stop It program, because they want to see their numbers going up for things being reported. When it really starts to work, they should want to see the numbers go down. They should want to see use go up and reports go down. But they're still on the level of they're gauging their success on the number of reports and contacts. The goal of that is to not have them.
Absolutely.
Right, so that's another reason why I look at that company and I say, yeah, but it's money, because they're doing exactly the corporate thing.
Unfortunately, it is free to us. Our insurance board, Skidbit, they handle that, so it's free to us. But I understand. I hear where you're coming
No, thank you for that. Anything else?
For
Thank
your
you.
part, do you feel as though you've been heard today?
Yes, but that remains to see what comes out of this.
Okay.
So
No,
do I
just
feel
for
like I've
today.
been heard? Yes.
Okay.
Do I feel like it's stuck? We'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if anybody wants a guitar pick, there's a reason why.
Okay, yeah, I would.
That actually got really good.
Chuck 'em up.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, when we were at Charleston Music Hall,
Do you mind if I get one for the remaining board members?
Very much, thank you.
It's probably safer with you.
we were at Charleston Music Hall, and
Thank you.
I was able to, from the balcony, click
Throw
one,
off the balcony.
and it landed right in front of Lizzie Hale.
That was really
It literally it bounced right in front of her foot. And so it was the Hailstorm living room session, so it was just Lizzie and Joe. And it was right at the end, and I went ahead and flipped one down, and it landed right in front of her. And Joe was like, "Hey, we throw the picks."
Yeah.
And so then after she picked up, she's like, "No, this is a good one."
Thank you.
Thank you very much.